Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today is Veterans Day, and so we find ourselves at Los Angeles National Cemetery to remember stars who lived to serve their country while entertaining us along the way. Join us, won't you? Over the years here on Hollywood Graveyard, we've visited quite a few stars who served their country in the armed services like Jimmy Stewart, or entertaining troops on USO tours like Marilyn Monroe and Bob Hope. Here at Los Angeles National Cemetery, in fact, the chapel is named in honor of Bob Hope, who entertained troops more than any other individual in every theater of war, making America's servicemen and women feel like the most important people in the world. Interred in these grounds are veterans from every major war dating back to the Mexican-American War, including 14 Medal of Honor recipients and more than 100 Buffalo Soldiers, black soldiers who fought for their country despite not having equal rights under the laws. Los Angeles National Cemetery was formed in the late 1880s and is located in the Westwood area of Los Angeles, just down the street actually from one of the world's most star-studded cemeteries, Westwood Village Memorial Park. And though we won't find anyone here that you might classify as an A-list celebrity, I think we can all agree that everyone in these sacred grounds is a star in their own right. If we had 1,000 years, we'd cover them all. But as we don't, today we'll find some of the stars here who, in addition to serving their country, brought us a little entertainment as well. Arriving at the cemetery, let's take the first right and head south. On the left, let's stop at section 118. Here is the grave of Cy Schindel. He started out as a boxer in the late 20s before being bitten by the acting bug, soon finding himself at Columbia, where he would appear in dozens of Three Stooges shorts, often as the antagonist to the Stooges. He served in the Marine Corps during World War II. While on Guadalcanal, he caught a severe case of jungle rot, which developed into cancer. He continued to work hard while battling the disease to ensure his family's well-being, but died from the disease at 41. A few rows back and further south, we find Carl Hackett, whose real name was Carl Germain. He was an actor who performed principally in the 30s and 40s. Not a leading man, but a regular feature in westerns of this era, particularly as villains. Carl was also an Army veteran, having served in World War I. He died from pneumonia at age 55. Continuing still further south, closer to the road, we reach section 107. Here lies Jack Holt, an actor whose career began in the silent era. By the 20s, he had become one of Columbia's rugged, square-jawed, leading men, perhaps most notably in a number of Frank Capra action dramas of the 20s, including Submarine, Flight, and Dirigible. He can also be seen in 1942's Cat People. Jack Holt is also said to be the visual inspiration for Dick Tracy. At the outbreak of World War II, Jack enlisted in the Army at the age of 54. He died from a heart attack at age 62. Let's make our way now to the furthest section south in the cemetery. Toward the wall, we find Dean Paul Martin, Jr. If the name is familiar to you, yes, this is the son of Dean Martin, who rests at Westwood Village Memorial Park just down the street. As the son of one of the great crooners of the 20th century, Dean Paul Martin gravitated towards singing as a youth. He joined up with another famous offspring, Desi Arnaz Jr., and Billy Hinch to form the pop group Dino, Desi, and Billy. They had a few minor hits in the 60s, including I'm a Fool.
Just a silly fool to be in love with you.
Acting would follow, including the 1979 film Players, which earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Martin became an officer in the California National Air Guard, eventually rising to the rank of captain. Tragically, Dean Paul Martin died during a training exercise in 1987 when his plane crashed in a snowstorm. He was just 35. Hopping back across the street north to section 150, we find Woodrow Parfrey, a prolific character actor who was a familiar face on film and television in the 60s and 70s. He began mainly on the Broadway stage in the 40s and 50s, and by the 60s was appearing in guest roles in just about every major TV show of the era. Major film roles include Papillon, Planet of the Apes, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Charlie Varick. Parfrey fought in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II and was injured and captured by the Germans. His experiences would inform his tough, eccentric performances as an actor. He died from a heart attack at age 61. In the next block east, along the road, is section 179, where rests David Gorcey. You may recognize the name from our tour of Shalom Memorial Park. David Gorcey comes from a family of actors, including his father, Bernard Gorcey, and brother, Leo Gorcey. Along with Leo, David starred in the series of films in the 40s featuring the East Side Kids as Pee-wee and the Bowery Boys as Chuck. He can be seen in around 50 films in this series, one of the most popular series of the era and one of the longest running ever. Gorcey would also serve in the Army during World War II. He died from complications of diabetes at age 63. Let's proceed further north into this lawn. In section 206, we find William Fairbanks. He was a silent film actor who appeared in close to 70 films between 1916 and 1928. He's best known for westerns like the 1923 film Spawn of the Desert. He had non-western roles as well, including 1925's Fighting Youth. During World War I, Fairbanks served as an ensign in the US Navy. He died at age 50 from pneumonia. In this same section, just a little further north, is Douglas MacPhail. The talented young actor and singer would appear and perform in some of the biggest musical films of the 30s and 40s, including alongside Judy Garland in Little Nellie Kelly and Babes in Arms.
Seem to be happening again.
He enlisted in the Army during World War II, serving briefly before a medical discharge. His performing career stalled, though, and after his wife left him, he turned to alcohol, sinking into a depression that tragically would lead him to take his own life by poison at age 30. Let's turn back south now to a section of cremation graves along the southern block. This is where actor Henry Roland is laid to rest. A proud Army veteran of World War II, Roland's unique features would, ironically, often find him playing Nazi villains, German soldiers, Gestapo agents, and the like, in war films, including Casablanca. He'd then go on to be a regular on television, notably in westerns like Annie Oakley and The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. Roland lived to be 70. Still further south is a pair of what look like maintenance sheds. On the far side, near the road, we find Leroy Prinz. He's known for choreographing dance numbers for some of the biggest films in the 30s to the 50s. These include James Cagney's Yankee Doodle Dandy and South Pacific. He was nominated for 3 Oscars in his career for his dance direction, including for the 1937 film Waikiki Wedding. At the outbreak of World War I, he served in France in the Aviation Corps, earning the nickname of Crash Ace Prinz for the number of aircraft he crashed, more than a dozen by his own account. He died of natural causes at age 87. Let's turn north onto Marnie Avenue. On the right is section 220, where we find Russell Hicks. The prolific character actor has over 300 credits to his name, most active in the 30s to the 50s. He's known for playing distinguished and cultured gentlemen, military officers, or smooth-talking confidence men. His film credits include The Little Foxes, The Bluebird, and The Three Musketeers. During World War I, he served in the US Army in France, and later became a lieutenant colonel in the California State Guard. Hicks suffered a heart attack after an auto accident, passing away at age 61. A little further north, let's stop at section 218. Here lies Grant Williams. Fans of classic sci-fi will recognize Grant Williams for his starring role in the 1957 film, The Incredible Shrinking Man. On television, Williams had a recurring role in the 50s and 60s series Hawaiian Eye. Before acting, though, Grant Williams enlisted in the US Air Force, serving during the Korean War. He was just 53 when he died of peritonitis. Crossing the street west, we find the grave of Floyd Lawrence Butler. He was a singer, a member of a number of popular R&B groups in the 60s and 70s. He was part of the group The Vocals until 1965, and later co-founded the group The Friends of Distinction, who had a hit in the song Grazing in the Grass.
It sure is never grazing in the grass. Grazing in the grass is a yes, baby, can you?
Floyd Butler was also a corporal in the US Marine Corps. He was just 52 when he died from a heart attack. Zigzagging back across the street, further north to section 217, is where Claude Stroud is laid to rest. He was an actor who had small roles in some big films, like as Sid Arbuck in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and the pianist in All About Eve. On television, he could frequently be seen in The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Claude had a twin brother, Clarence, and the two would sometimes perform together, including in the short comedy Twin Couplets. He would go on to marry one of the twins in the film, Gloria Brewster. Claude served in the Army during World War II and lived to be 78. Back yet again across the street west to section 189. This is Royal Dano, one of Hollywood's most unique character actors. His deep, croaky voice and tall, gaunt appearance made him perfect for cowboys, villains, and the like. He played Elijah in Moby Dick and Ten Spot in The Outlaw Josie Wales. Today, though, many audiences would recognize his voice as the voice of the animatronic Abraham Lincoln at both Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom.
The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty.
He had played Abraham Lincoln on television as well. One of his last roles was as Judge Sternwood on Twin Peaks. Royal Dano served in the US Army during World War II, where he attained the rank of sergeant. He died of a heart attack at age 71. Let's hop back in the car and head a little further north to around the middle of this lawn. Here lies Henry Barrows. He was an actor mainly active in the silent era, but also in early talkies. His films include Captain Blood and A Soldier's Oath. Among the talkies he can be seen in include 1931's Guilty Hands alongside Lionel Barrymore. Barrows was also a sergeant in the Army. He lived to be 69. Our journey now takes us to the northern end of these lawns. First, on the left, is Michael Hinn. His time serving in the Navy and Air Force in 3 wars, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, surely informed the acting roles for which he would be known, as sheriffs, deputies, and cavalrymen, often in westerns. He had recurring roles in shows like Boots and Saddles, Johnny Ringo, Gunsmoke, and Death Valley Days. Michael Hinn lived to be 74. On the east side now, close to the road, is the final resting place of Spencer Williams. Though perhaps not as well remembered today, in his day Spencer Williams was among the most successful Black Americans in film and television. The actor, director, writer, and producer was a pioneer of race films, films produced for Black audiences. Among the films he produced and directed are Juke Joint and The Blood of Jesus, considered by many as one of the most successful race films ever. He's perhaps best remembered today for playing Andy in the 50s TV sitcom The Amos and Andy Show. The show remains controversial to this day because, though it was among the very first to portray Black Americans on television in lead roles and in non-servile roles, many felt the depictions were still stereotypical and harmful. So the show was canceled after 4 seasons and eventually pulled from syndication. Williams served in the Army during World War I, rising to the rank of Sergeant Major. He died of a kidney ailment at age 76. And back again to the west side is actor Paul Genji. He's perhaps best remembered as the shotgun-toting hitman in the 1968 film Bullet. Other films include Hot Rods to Hell, and TV appearances include shows like Perry Mason and The Untouchables. Paul Genji served in the US Army during World War II, rising to the rank of Staff Sergeant. He lived to be 75. Let's move on now to the next section east. In section 266, a little ways in from the road, we find Herb Butterfield. The actor is known for his role as Clarence Wellman on both radio and television productions of The Halls of Ivy. Other radio and TV productions he's known for include as Lee Jones in Dragnet and the Commissioner in Dangerous Assignment. and on film he can be seen as Joseph Callahan in House on Telegraph Hill. Butterfield served in the Army during World War I and lived to be 61. Proceeding south again, let's stop on the right. In a ways, we find section 254, where rests James R. Webb. He was an Academy Award-winning screenwriter, perhaps best remembered for the script that won him the Oscar, the 1962 film How the West Was Won. Other films he wrote include Cape Fear and a series of Roy Rogers films. Webb was commissioned an Army officer during World War II, serving as a personal aide to General Fredendall, and participating in the invasion of North Africa. He lived to be 64. On we go further south, let's stop on the left, and then head in a little ways to find the grave of Juan Duval. The Spanish-born actor came to Hollywood in the silent era to work as a flamenco dancer and fight choreographer for the likes of Rudolph Valentino. As an actor, he can be seen in small roles in dozens of films in the 30s to the 50s, including as Juan in the 1936 double feature, The Black Coin. He also did a little writing for film, like 1946's Devil Monster. Duvall also served in the Army during World War II. He was just 56 when he died. Let's head just a bit further south on this lawn, and closer to the road. Earlier we visited David Gorcey of Dead End Kid and Bowery Boys fame. Here we find another of the Dead End Kids, Bobby Jordan. He was one of the original lineup of the Dead End Kids, which began on stage as a play before the 1937 film Dead End. The series about a young group of New York hoodlums growing up on the streets would become immensely popular and spawn dozens of films under various monikers, including East Side Kids and the Bowery Boys. In 1943, Bobby Jordan entered the Army during World War II as a foot soldier in the 97th Infantry Division. After returning from the war, he found it more difficult to find work and fell into alcoholism. Bobby Jordan died from cirrhosis of the liver at just 42. Let's circle around now to the easternmost section. Between the road and the fence is the grave of actress June Gittleson. Fans of the Three Stooges will recognize her from a handful of Stooges films in the 1930s, perhaps most notably as Minnie in False Alarms. She had around 100 credits to her name, often in minor roles, in films like Lost in the Stratosphere and King Kong. She was married to Melvin Thale, who served in the Marine Corps. June's birth year is given here as 1914, but online records give it as 1910, so she was either 79 or 83 when she died. A few spaces north is John Russell. The rugged actor is known for his starring role as Marshal Dan Troop in the Western series Lawman from 1958 to 1962, and as Tim Kelly in the series Soldiers of Fortune. He can be seen alongside some of Western cinema's greats, including John Wayne in Rio Bravo and Clint Eastwood in The Outlaw Josie Wales. Russell was awarded the Golden Boot in 1987. During World War II, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the 6th Marine Regiment, serving as an intelligence officer on Guadalcanal. Russell died from complications of emphysema at age 70. Crossing the street, a bit further north on the left in section 299, is Dick Yarmy. You wouldn't know it by his name, but Yarmy is the younger brother of Get Smart actor Don Adams, whose real name was Donald Yarmy. As a comedic actor, Dick appeared a handful of times on Get Smart with his brother, and would go on to appear in popular comedies of the era, like That Girl and Mork and Mindy. His film roles include the Kentucky Fried Movie. Yarmy served in the Army during the Korean War. During his battle with cancer, a group of comedians called Yarmy's Army formed to support him, and continues to do benefit shows for comedians in need. Dick Yarmy died from lung cancer at age 59. Let's change scenery a bit now. Near the middle of the cemetery is a series of columbaria. The large one to the west is a columbarium mausoleum. Along this outer wall, we find a number of plaques, including that of Fred D. Scott. The veteran actor began performing in the 70s and would appear on shows like Good Times, The Jeffersons, and The Roots miniseries. He also had small roles in films like Repossessed and Weird Science. Scott had initially trained and set out to be an opera singer, but while serving as a surgical technician in the Army during World War II, he contracted tuberculosis in the South Pacific, which put an end to his singing aspirations. Still, he lived life to the fullest, dying at the age of 83. Though on the wall further down, we find Lou Gallo. He was an actor and producer, perhaps best known for his role as Major Joseph Cobb in the World War II series 12 O'Clock High. He can also be seen in shows like The Twilight Zone and Gunsmoke. Gallo was also a producer for shows like That Girl, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and The New Mike Hammer. He served in the Army during the Korean War. Gallo's wife Lillian was also a producer, forming one of the first female TV producing teams in Hollywood. She became known for doing movies of the week, like The Stranger Who Looks Like Me. She also produced the miniseries Princess Daisy. Lillian served in the Marine Corps for 4 years, including time at the Pentagon, achieving rank of captain. She died from complications of Alzheimer's at the age of 84. Let's make our way now inside the mausoleum, where valor proudly sleeps. In the main foyer of the mausoleum, you'll see a number of uniforms, indicative of those worn by our servicemen and women. Turning right into section 300, on the left is the niche of Arthur Houseman. The comedic actor of Silence and on into the Golden Age would become known as one of Hollywood's most famous comedic drunkards. He has over 300 credits to his name. You saw him in a number of Laurel and Hardy shorts, like The Live Ghost, as well as feature films like Movie Crazy and Sunrise. I believe the inscription here indicates he was a fireman for the United States Navy Reserve. Houseman died of pneumonia at the age of 52. In this same alcove to the right is James P. Spencer. Born in Hawaii, Spencer was a native Polynesian singer and dancer. He would take his talents to Hollywood, appearing in small roles in a number of South Sea Island films that were produced in the 30s and 40s, like The Sea God and The Jungle Princess. He also appeared along James Cagney in Each Dawn I Die. Spencer joined the Army during World War I in the 39th Field Artillery, 13th Division, rising to the rank of corporal. James P. Spencer's death in 1943 is one of the rare but tragic cases of death on a movie set. While working in an MGM soundstage, a large lamp fell 40 feet, striking and killing Mr. Spencer. He was 50. Passing to the other side of the main foyer, high on the right, is Howard McNear. The lovably vague character actor is perhaps best remembered for playing barbers, as Floyd the Barber on The Andy Griffith Show, and as Andy the Barber on Leave It to Beaver. And fans of the George Burns and Gracie Allen Show will instantly recognize him as Mr. Jansen the plumber. His film roles include Dr. Dompierre in Anatomy of a Murder. McNear enlisted as a private in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. He died from complications of pneumonia following a stroke at the age of 63. Over to section 313, we find James Warner Bella. He was a writer known for penning Western serials from the 30s to the 50s. His novel, The Valiant Virginian, would be the inspiration for the 1961 TV series, The Americans. His short stories would also serve as source material for films like Rio Grande, Fort Apache, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. And as a screenwriter, he crafted the script for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, based on a short story by Dorothy M. Johnson. During World War I, Bella served as a pilot for the Royal Flying Corps, and he also served in the U.S. Army during World War II and the Korean War. He died after suffering a heart attack at age 77. 2 corridors down is the niche of George Eldridge. The prolific actor had close to 300 film and television credits to his name. He often played authority figures, including in the cult 1945 exploitation film Mom and Dad, and as Dr. Tobor in Captain Video, Master of the Stratosphere. Through the 50s and 60s, he made appearances on just about every major TV show, including The Loretta Young Show, Peter Gunn, and Adventures of Superman. He served in the Army during World War II as a corporal. George Eldridge lived to be 78. Let's head back out to the grounds, shall we? Turning right to the easternmost section, section 52, let's take a long stroll into the middle of this lawn and find Jack Doherty. He was a minor leading man of B-westerns and serials at Universal in the 20s. His films include The Radio Detective and Haunted Valley, as well as the R-Gang feature, General Spanky. During World War I, he served in France in the Marine Corps. By the 30s, his career began to dwindle, and financial troubles mounted. He took his own life by carbon monoxide poisoning at the age of 42. Jack had been married to actress Barbara Lamar until her death in 1926. Let's head now to one of the older sections in the cemetery, in the very far north. Heading into section 13, we find a man who was not an entertainer, but an interesting folk figure in American history, Nicholas Earp. He was the father of legendary Western lawmen Virgil, Morgan, and Wyatt Earp, famous for their part in the shootout at OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. As for Nicholas, he served as a sergeant in the Mexican-American War, and also fought for the Union during the Civil War. Later in life, he'd become a justice of the peace, eventually settling down in California, dying at the age of 93. Between these sections of upright markers is a section of flat markers. It's hard to read, but here lies David McDearman. He was a director for television who worked on many of the great shows of the 50s and 60s, directing episodes of Peter Gunn, The Twilight Zone, Gilligan's Island, and Bewitched. Before focusing on directing, he also had a small career as an actor, seen in shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He served in the Army during World War II at the rank of Major. McDearman was 65 when he died. Let's make our way up and around to Buena Vista Avenue, just past the Cannon, to section 1A on the right. Meet Ina Suez. She was an opera singer who found much of her success performing the operas of Mozart, Bizet, and Puccini in England. Hers were the first commercial recordings of Don Giovanni and Così fan tutte. During the war years, she served in the U.S. Army Women's Army Corps, and after the war years made her way back to the States, continuing to perform. There she began to shift her repertoire from opera to jazz, even teaming up as the Dizzy Diva for Spike Jones and his City Slickers. Ina Suez lived to be 89. Further south in this same section, near the middle, is John Hudson. The actor can be seen in films like Gunfight at the OK Corral, playing Virgil Earp, and the lead role in The Screaming Skull. And like many of the actors we visited today, he found regular work in guest appearances in shows of the 60s, including Dragnet 1967. Hudson also served as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. He lived to be 77. Just a few feet away is the grave of Walter Barnes, a character actor known for rugged outdoor type roles. He played football in the NFL before moving to Hollywood. He appeared in shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza, and would soon come to be associated with Clint Eastwood, appearing alongside the legend in films like High Plains Drifter, and as Sheriff Dix in Bronco Billy. During World War II, Barnes served in the Army as a sergeant. He lived to be 79. South across the street is a large monument in memory of the men and all-eyed women who offered their lives in defense of their country. You fans of classic horror and sci-fi might recognize this next actor. Not far from this monument is the grave of Richard Carlson. He played David Reed in the 1954 film Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Hey, darling.
David! David!
He also made us scream in films like The Ghost Breakers and It Came from Outer Space. He's also known for starring in, writing, and directing the show Mackenzie's Raiders, which ran from 1958 to 1959. During World War II, Carlson served in the U.S. Navy. He died from a cerebral hemorrhage at age 65. Let's double back around to the northwest to find section 84. Here we find a pioneer of aviation, William J. Powell. After serving in World War I, he became fascinated with flight, and in the 1920s became a pilot. He formed the Bessie Coleman Aero Club in honor of the first black aviator to promote aviation in the African American community. He believed their involvement in the industry would help end racial prejudices in the era of segregation and Jim Crow laws. Powell put on all Negro air shows and recruited and trained some of the future Tuskegee Airmen, who in World War II were responsible for downing some 260 German aircraft. He would not live long enough to see the heroism of the black aviators his efforts would produce, dying at the age of 44, likely from long-term effects of a poison gas attack during World War I. The southern end of this lawn is Section 50. This is Stanley Fields, whose real name was Walter Agnew. He began as a boxer, then a vaudeville performer, before making his way to the screen. A broken nose he had suffered while boxing gave him the perfect look for the heavies he'd play in films like Little Caesar and Hell's Kitchen. Other films include Island of Lost Souls. I believe the inscription here suggests his service was as a medic, perhaps during the First World War. He died after suffering a heart attack at age 57. For our last stop here at LANC proper, we head back around toward the chapel, stopping on the right in Section 99. Ooh, nice view of the 405 traffic, which I will be in before long. Here lies John Lawrence Kreiner, often credited as Lawrence Kreiner. While lesser known today, he was one of the popular black actors of the 30s and 40s, a leading man of the race films we discussed earlier. These films principally featured an entirely black cast and were distributed to what were in the era of segregation known as colored-only theaters. Lawrence Kreiner's films include Black Gold and The Flying Ace, which has been preserved as culturally significant by the Library of Congress. He also acted in Hollywood films like King of the Zombies. Kreiner is lauded by film historians for his efforts to provide positive images of people of color on screen, rather than stereotypes. During World War II, Kreiner served in the Navy Reserve. He lived to be 66. Finally, we head to a brand new section of LA National, a columbarium that opened in 2019. To get there, we actually have to pass under the 405 freeway and find it on the right. Here is the niche of funny man Jack Burns. He's fondly remembered as half the comic duo Burns and Carlin, with fellow funny man George Carlin. He would later form a comedy partnership with Avery Schreiber. Moving on to acting, he can be seen as Deputy Ferguson on The Andy Griffith Show, and would even do voice work for the Animaniacs and The Simpsons. His comedic chops even extended to writing, being a head writer for shows like Hee Haw and The Muppet Show, which earned him 2 Emmy nominations. The "huh" inscription here is an allusion to one of his trademarks while performing. And you can also see here that Jack Burns served as a sergeant in the US Marine Corps during the Korean War. He died from respiratory failure at the age of 86. Thanks for the laughs, Jack. And that concludes our tour. Who are the veteran heroes you're remembering today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. To all the veterans out there, thank you.